Well, ladies and gentlemen, I let you tuned in today to listen to what the retarded news is today in Retard Dunstan, because, as per usual, the news is pretty retarded. So before we get on to the main video of today, can I yet again remind you, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. It really would help me in my quest to 200,000 subscribers. So let's start off with the first one, and that is that some individuals have been protesting outside of the US Consulate in Sanin. Now, this protest is in relation to Venezuela, specifically the imprisonment of Mo Madura. As you know, if you've been watching this channel, you'll recall that Trump went in there and arrested him for drug-related offenses. So, anyway, have a watch of the protest.
My name is Chief Kampi Duarte. We find ourselves here at the American Embassy. In our picket and protest here, it's all about anti-imperialism. The imperialism that has been shut down to innocent countries by the Trump administration. You know that the Venezuelan president was kidnapped. How can you steal him? How can you steal a president? So that to us is our concerns as communities, as organizations within the Republic of South Africa to say, no, we are not happy with the Trump administration. Amasi, kijk aan gaan.
Now, one thing that you'll notice when you watch the protest is the number of Palestinian flags, because nothing says Venezuela like, I don't know, Palestine. And a number of individuals now dressed up in what can only be described as traditional dress with, I don't know, smoking some Zord. Because this is what these issues have all conflated into. You've got individuals in traditional, I don't know, Zulu dress with Palestinian garbs, waving Palestinian flags whilst somehow protesting against the US. The entire thing is bullshit. I mean, what you really see is just how this nexus of powers have congealed around this issue. And that's part of the reason I'm talking about Israel so much, because you can see this axis of interest all just congealing around each other. Anyway, let's move on to some other news. Now, for those of you who don't know, in Port Elizabeth, we've recently been without power. In fact, this story, I am told by a senior MP in Parliament as part of the energy portfolio, that this story that I'm about to tell you is apparently becoming the norm, and the amount of places that he's going and seeing very similar events unfolding around the country is quite staggering, he says. Well, in any case, we've been without electricity for a number of days, and the electricity, as of yesterday, got restored, but then went down, but then came back. We don't know, it's restored, it's not, I haven't got a clue. In any case, let me tell you what happened. So, two major 362 kilovolt transmission towers collapsed. Now, you may look at that and say, well, how do transmission towers collapse? Well, we all asked the same question. Now, the collapse affected the main supply line between substations serving Port Elizabeth, and the possible contributions were cited as aging and corroded infrastructure, poor maintenance, severe weather, or vandalism. Now, the municipality originally said, vandalism, vandalism, nothing to do with us. And subsequent investigation showed that it had nothing to do with the weather, nothing to do with vandalism, and it was nothing more than aged or poor maintenance. Now, this isn't the first time that these collapses have occurred, because 4 pylons gave way in 2024. Now, the impact of that was that we had widespread power outages which lasted on the whole of PE for 5 days in some areas. And water supplies were also disrupted because the pump stations require electricity and they went offline. And we're going to talk about water in a moment as well. Now, in typical fashion, they deployed tankers to some suburbs because, as we know, the water mafia loves them tankers. They can sell those tankers at a massive increase to the municipality, and who cares if you have water because they've got lucre. It's all good. Now, internal municipal estimates warned of an up to 2-week blackout for the entire city, because apparently just blacking out your city for 2 weeks won't have any economic consequences whatsoever. And I suppose when you're in government and all you do is loot funds, I suppose you never really kind of see the impact of what you do. Now, the municipality spent an estimated 10 million rand on repairs, and contractors were bussed in to install new pylons and rebuild foundations with concrete, because the idea now is that concrete is less likely to be stolen for copper parts. In any case, power restoration began at 2 p.m. on Tuesday following infrastructure testing. Basically means they actually just started working on Tuesday, and somehow they just managed to get it to work. Now, the restoration of the grid was actually phased to prevent overloads, because that's one of the big problems you have when you turn the grid off. When you put everything on, things tend to trip. Houses trip, geysers burst, all sorts of stuff occurs. And the residents were advised to switch off all heavy appliances, at least they will get blown, and disconnect generators before supply returned. Although you didn't actually know when supply was going to return, it just kind of happened. And even when it did happen, it didn't really happen for long because it tripped. There was constant problems. So I love this idea that residents were asked to do some stuff, but how? Because they didn't even know when they were turning it on. I mean, they came on when it came on. It was 5 days later. So do you just sit in front of the trip switch going, any day now, any day now? I suppose if you're an ANC cadre, that's exactly what you think the public does, right? Sit around all day waiting for you to, I don't know, do your job or something. Now, power restoration enabled gradual stabilization of water services because whilst the power was out, they couldn't recycle water and they couldn't pump water. And again, we're going to talk about water in a minute. Now, opposition parties blamed the long-term maintenance failures, loss of skilled technical staff, and business groups warned of economic damage and infrastructure vulnerability. Part of the reason of infrastructure damage, if you want to call it that, is because people's geysers were bursting left, right, and center throughout the city. When the water was off, when it came back on, pressure hit the geysers, and the geysers burst. In fact, same thing happened to my own house. Now, separate incidents of cable theft or possible sabotage were reported in earlier outages. Oh, wait, so was vandalism or somebody stole a pylon? The municipality said, no, trust us, bro. It was like weather or something. You notice how they just lie. Now, the actual mayor, the mayor in charge of this, has been referred for a criminal investigation to an alleged unauthorized removal or lease of a municipal transformer. Now, the transformer was allegedly moved or leased to Coker Steel, a private company, and the transformer itself was valued at around 25 million. Now, the mayor, the ANC mayor, was named in the investigation. Now, a former good councillor laid the criminal complaint. Now, don't forget, good are kind of in a coalition with them, so they know. Anyway, SAPS confirmed that an investigation is underway, and the documents reviewed by the news indicated that approval allegedly occurred without council authorization, and it's possibly a breach of the Municipal Finance Act, the MFMA. But then again, none of this comes as a surprise. So I just want to lay the groundwork for what the mayor of PE is actually like. And in your mind, you're thinking pretty much like all of the mayors that the ANC nominates. Now, it's important to remember that this mayor was enabled to be a mayor by the PA, because the PA went into coalition with the ANC, the Northern Alliance, and the EFF in order to govern this municipality after they kicked out Retief, the DA prior or former mayor of the city. Now, a legal memorandum reportedly described this transaction by this mayor as unlawful and irregular. And the matter is still to be seen before the courts at the time of this video, really. But again, none of this comes as a surprise. So I want you to bear that all in mind, because going back to the water issue, there's been a huge drought now in the Eastern Cape for the whole of summer. We haven't really had any rain, and so water's struggling to keep up. Now, remember what happened with the electricity? There'd been no maintenance. Well, in the water environment, there's been no maintenance as well. So like 60% of the used water on a daily basis in Nelson Mandela Bay is lost due to leaks that the municipality hasn't fixed. Now, that in itself is causing a problem because the municipality is now becoming a water-scarce environment. If you know anything about Nelson Mandela Bay, this isn't the first time it's getting to a water-scarce environment. This did occur before, where we basically had day zero and nobody noticed. Well, in any case, the mayor has been asked exactly why this issue is occurring, and she had the following to say.
Because the issue of the water crisis might take a bit longer in the city because our dams are going down and we are not assisted by residents and businesses in water conservation. And we are going to make sure that we hammer on them that it's a collective responsibility, because no individual is supposed to use water more than 50 liters a day.
So it's really interesting to note that the mayor says, well, we are having water problems here, and it's the residents' faults because they're using water. And because they're using water and they're not like conserving it or something, somehow that's their fault. As if, I don't know, they leave taps on all night and, I don't know, have 50-hour-long showers or something. Like, what's going on here when you fail to adequately look after a municipality? You're subject to criminal investigation for stealing from the residents. You do no maintenance to their city to the point where their water and their electricity infrastructure crumbles. And then when you call down on it, you say it's your fault. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is actually the ANC all over. And I doubt any of you are looking at that and going, oh my God, that doesn't sound like the ANC at all. Because it's like, well, it's pretty much the ANC 101. Now, coming back to the PA. Now, if you recall, the PA was given a parliamentary portfolio, specifically the sports portfolio, well, sports and culture portfolio. Now, I'm not going to talk about all the name changes that Gator Mackenzie has approved in the Eastern Cape, such as the renaming of East London to, I don't know, can't say this bloody name, and I doubt any of you can either. I thought Gayton wasn't into all these renaming stuff that the ANC loves to do, but apparently he is, because he signed off on it. In any case, let's look at Jefferies Bay. Now, if you know anything about Jefferies Bay, it's a DA area. And you'll know that one of the key areas around Jefferies Bay is, well, surfing. And it's around international surfing competitions, specifically the World Surf League. Now, the World Surf League goes to Jefferies Bay every year, and they conduct surfing championships. It's actually one of their top destinations, one of the best waves or best places in the world to visit, apparently, for surfing. I'm not a surfer myself, but I'm told that it's great. In any case, the World Surf League released their 2026 championship tour, and Jefferies Bay is not listed on the 2026 schedule. Now, Cape Town remains on the 12-day event tour. Jefferies doesn't. In fact, New Zealand has been added as a replacement. And this got many individuals to say, well, what the hell happened here? Jefferies Bay is considered to be one of the best waves in the world. The event was removed, apparently, according to the organization, due to insufficient financial support. And the World Surf League stated that the event was just not financially viable in Jefferies Bay in 2026. So the World Surf League indicated that the decision was basically due to financial and not performance or quality related. I mean, there's nothing wrong with Jefferies Bay because obviously it's a DA-run area. And it's the quality of the waves. I mean, the ocean's the ocean. So they're saying that there just isn't finance. Now, the DA mayor of Koka, Hatan, he said that the municipality had not been able to secure enough funding to host the event. But according to the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture, no national funding commitment had ever been received from them. So they didn't say that they were going to fund it in the first place. And the municipality's own contribution was going to be insufficient to cover the costs alone, suggesting that really the bulk of the funding would have come from the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture, and they say that they weren't funding it. The question then becomes, well, has this occurred in the past? Like, isn't this just what you did last year, repeated this year? But what we do know is that the event has now moved to New Zealand because funding was secured in New Zealand. And the loss is expected to have negative economic and tourist impacts on Koka, which relies on surf competitions and tourists to said surf competitions for its local economy. Now, Koka does still remain hopeful that Jefferies Bay will get this event back in 2027 if funding is secured, but there is still a lot of questions around what actually happened. Now, the DA in Koka described the loss as devastating, and the party characterized the World Surf League event as a major international sporting event, a key driver for local and economic activity. And the DA said that the event supports restaurants, accommodation, and informal traders and tourist jobs, and the event injects millions of rands annually into the local economy. So it's a big event. Like, you don't just want to lose it. So again, what went wrong? Well, the DA says it was the national government's failure to secure funding. They call for greater accountability from provincial and national authorities, effectively saying that it's Gayton's fault. So Gayton's fault for not securing funding, or at least not saying that he would fund it, or at least Gayton's department's fault, even though they say they didn't actually get funding requests or promise that they would give funding. I don't know what actually went on here. Well, the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture rejected the claims that it withdrew funding or failed to honor commitments. They stated that the Jefferies Bay World Surf League event is a privately owned and commercially promoted event, and that is part of the global pro surf circuit since mid-1980s, and the events operated for decades without their funding. So they said that commercial conditions have changed and that the organizers are now seeking funding not previously required. So they're saying they didn't fund this in the past. It's the first time they've been asked to fund it, and they haven't funded it. They're saying that economically it was usually funded commercially. This is the first year it's needed governmental funds in order to go ahead. Now, Gayton's department denied that Gayton withdrew support and suggested that his department hadn't failed to honor any commitments because they didn't actually have any commitments to honor in the first place. So they said that any request for national funding must follow the bidding and hosting of international sports and recreations events regulation. It's the first time they're applying for it. It's a big process, and a formal application must be submitted. And if national guarantees are required, the minister must submit the request to cabinet for approval. And the department stated that no formal funding application had been received for the event. As a result, no national funding decision had ever been taken, so they couldn't actually have taken the funding away. So the minister say the DA is now misdirecting the fault, the political blame for this onto Gayton, and they suggesting that it was the local municipality's fault for being unable to secure the funding. Now, according to the department, it confirmed that South Africa continues to support the whole Surfing South Africa events to make South Africa a destination for surfing events. And they said that they would provide funding on an annual grant underneath a 3-year agreement subject to available funds if needed. Now, they emphasized that the support was developmental only, and it was not their role to finance or provide funding to host these events. So we really have to ask the logical question. Is this the DA trying to redirect responsibility onto the PA and blaming the PA for this new change in funding? I think it's likely, but there is actually a deeper question here that nobody's addressing, and that is, Port Elizabeth gets less flights now from Joburg. We don't have many flights coming here anymore. With the loss of certain local airlines, the number of flights flying from Joburg to PE daily are like nowhere near what they used to be. I remember a time when flights would come in all the time, but that's not the case anymore. With local infrastructure here in the decline, it's less likely that people actually want to come to this area because the locality is not good. It is currently degrading. Now, that's not to say that everything in PE is degrading. I drove around the airport yesterday, and I've got to be honest and say they surprised me because many of the street poles that had previously been cut down and had just been left on the side after they'd stripped it from copper have now been resurrected or re-put up. So it's not entirely true to say that the municipality is not taking steps to remedy things, but this is something that the ANC continues to forget. Their failure to govern has long-term impacts on all of us. And those impacts stretch to the confidence that people have when investing in the city. And the municipality and the ANC as a whole just doesn't think long-term. Everything's about short-term consumerism, how they can self-enrich, and they don't think of the long-term implications of what they are doing. And the long-term impacts are now being felt in something as small as a surfing competition in Jefferies Bay because the people have to transit through PE to get there. This government, there's nothing here. There's no plan, guys. They are just winging it on a daily basis. They don't know what they're doing. And if you're voting for the ANC, you are complicit in this. You are just retarded and you are responsible for the degradation that we must all share and have to live in. At least that's my opinions, guys. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. And until next time, bye.